to write down all the really smart things I'm going to say. All right, we are going to get started. Everybody should have a week 2 folder that has all of your things for tonight. We are starting week 2 of our summer roundtable conversation called Tighten the Knot. And over the next 7 weeks, we're going to talk specifically about strengthening our marriage. And this is going to be very conversational. So unlike a Sunday morning, you are going to spend time talking specifically with your spouse, specifically with the people at your table, and having conversations with us as well. So we're going to talk specifically about some hard topics, and we have a lot that we're going to cover. So we're going to go quickly and efficiently, but also want to make space for all of you to have time to ask questions and really dig into the content with your spouse. You, in your folder, will find all of the notes. You will find the homework, and you will also find more information and more resources in the Resource Hub at the back, and also in the Church Center app as well, if you have that on your phones. But we are going to get started with some ground rules for tonight so that everybody knows where we're at.
All right, rule number 1, be engaged. You've got to talk. This is a discussion-based conversation. We want you to talk. That's the whole point. So, when we ask you a question, it is not rhetorical. We want you to answer that question either at your table or with your spouse. And we want, when we give you an activity to do, we want you to do it. We've given you all the resources you need in your folder. Now, since we're talking about marriage, a lot of these questions are going to be directed to you as a couple, not necessarily at your table. Rule number 2, be kind. We're all learning in this together. No one in the room is an expert, and so we want to make sure that our responses and our conversation are marked with kindness. Now, in the coming weeks, we're going to talk about some really uncomfortable topics. Of course, my mic stopped working. That's cool. No, I got it. So in the next couple of weeks, we're going to talk about some uncomfortable topics. Next week, we're talking about sex. It's going to be the main subject of next week's conversation. So know that as we talk about marriage, there's no topic that is off the table. We're going to talk about all of it. So if you need to spread out in the room, if we bring up a conversation that you don't want your table mates to hear about, you and your spouse can move somewhere else in the room to have that conversation. That's totally okay. All right, rule number 3. This is a discussion-based study, but we don't have all night. So we're going to move through a lot of content tonight. There's blanks on your paper. We want you to fill in those blanks on your paper before you answer the question and have an open dialogue with your spouse, okay, so that we can stay on track. We've got a lot of things to cover, and in the Church Center app, there's even more information, more resources for you, and there's plenty of place there for you to ask questions all week long. So, with that in mind, make a point to be here every Wednesday and be here on time so we can get started on time. So we're going to pray, and then we're going to jump in.
I just want to add something. Some of you that don't have your spouse with you, if there's anything that we ask you to discuss specifically with your spouse, just feel free to make notes on your paper, to make a note to talk through that with them at a later time, because obviously you're not going to want to talk, you two probably don't want to talk to each other about things, which is fine. But just make sure you make a note, and do make time to go back and have those conversations and answer those questions with your spouse as well. So let's pray. Father God, I just thank you for this night. I thank you for this time in this space that we are able to be real and vulnerable and authentic with each other, that we are able to strengthen marriages through open conversation. God, I just pray that you specifically are at the center of all of these conversations. God, help us to remember to be kind, to be gracious, and to remember that nobody has it figured out, and we're all just learning to do this marriage thing better. And I just pray that as couples come and they do the hard work, God, I just pray that you would bless their efforts in what they are trying to do and how they're trying to glorify you with their relationship with their spouse. And it's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen. All right, so this is a a couple connect question, which means you're going to talk specifically to your spouse about it. But what we want you to do is take a few minutes, and we want you to talk to your spouse about how your homework this week went. Okay? First and foremost, did you complete it? What did you find the easiest of the homework, and what did you find the most difficult? If you do not have your spouse here, this is a great time to look back at the homework that maybe you didn't do or the homework you didn't get to, and just kind of pick a few things out that you feel like you missed out on something, and you can make a little note or a star or something in your notes to really get through that. So take a few minutes, talk to your spouse about the homework if you did it. If you didn't, take a few minutes to look over it, because there's some good stuff in there. What was the homework? Yeah, so you would have had the husband, you would have had that, Heather. Also to complete the SYMBIS if you had not already completed it. Then the spouse study challenge, which is that pink thing that you were just holding up. And then there was an extra question sheet that had 10, I think there's 10 questions on there to ask. And then there was also one called Pack Your Bags, couple activity.
All right. Well, I really enjoyed the extra question sheet. We did that this week in the hot tub, and I really enjoyed it. We didn't actually have to answer several on the bottom because there was nothing that you didn't know. So I really enjoyed that. It created great conversation this week.
The thing that I really enjoyed was the spouse study challenge. I think the biggest thing that I took away from it, and I didn't do it necessarily every day, but really just intentionally taking time to like notice things about you and taking time to slow down and not just be so rushed with everything that we do. That was really helpful. So hopefully you guys were able to complete some of that homework, or hopefully you have some time this week to go back if you didn't get a chance to do it all. But tonight, specifically where we're going to start is that there are a whole lot of myths out there that people believe as they enter into marriage. And everybody knows that like marriage is hard work. It's not easy. But if we're honest, when we said yes or said I do, we didn't expect it to be like a full-time job. Like we thought it would be hard, but we didn't think that it would be so strenuous, so tedious, so much to do. And so our culture has actually sold us this lie that even in fairy tales and things like that, that like once you get married, everything's going to be great. and we know that it's going to be hard, but we don't know that it's going to take so much intentionality. And so for a long time, our marriages have actually bogged us down or been saddled with like unrealistic expectations and very misguided assumptions. I think for me, one of the most unrealistic expectations was that like we were going to get married and it wouldn't be something that I would have to like work on myself. Like I thought you were here and I was here and we would both be here together. But as marriage moves and ebbs and flows and changes, you have to work on yourself a lot more than maybe people think. And so there are 4 common myths that are specifically about marriage. And the first one is that we expect exactly the same thing from marriage. When we get married, he wants this, this, and this, and I want this, this, and this, and that is not true. That is not how it works. The second one is that everything good in our relationship before we get married is going to get better. And we're going to dive into that myth and how that is actually inaccurate. The third myth is that my spouse will make me whole. We are looking for our spouse, whether we speak this expectation or not, we're looking for our spouse to make us one whole, complete person. And then the fourth myth is that everything bad in my life will disappear.
All right, so tonight we're going to explore each of these myths, and we're going to go through different parts of your SYMBIS assessment, which you have. But before we do that, I want to ask you a couple connect questions. So this is something for you to ask your spouse. Which of these 4 myths are you believing? So which of these 4 myths do you believe about marriage, or maybe did you believe about marriage before you got married? Which of these 4 myths did you believe?
Maybe you're reading them right now going, oh, I thought that was true until 30 seconds ago.
All right. So I think for me, the myth that I believed is that we would expect exactly the same things from marriage. And as our relationship's grown, we've actually moved closer to this reality because our marriage mindsets have shifted. So when we first took this survey, I was the romantic. We'll talk about what that means here in a moment. But I was the romantic, and now I am resolute. And so that was one of the lies that I believed, is that, hey, everything's going to be the same. We're both going to think and approach marriage in the same way, and that was wrong. So,
For me, the myth that I believed was the second one, which is that everything that is good will stay good and get better, and it'll just keep going. And early on in our marriage, and I think this is true for most people, like it was easy to spend time together. It was easy to come home and be like, oh, I'm married now and I like you still, and like we can do things. I mean, I still like you, but
That's good.
like it was just kind of that like honeymoon phase that lasted a while. And when you put in different dynamics like different jobs or even moving, being closer to family, further away from family, adding kids into the mix, it's our relationship is really good and it's really solid, but not everything that was good stayed good. There are now things that are good that weren't good before, and there are things that were good before that we probably could work on. So it's ebbs and flows and moves more than I thought it would.
All right, so we're going to look at our SYMBIS assessment. So this is page 1. You got that last week. I want you to look at page number 2. And on page number 2, you're going to find an overview of your assessment as well as your marriage momentum. And this part of the SYMBIS report reads like a snapshot of your relationship. It's like an X-ray summary that gives you insight into what is going on underneath the surface in your relationship. So, when you think about this idea of marriage momentum, I want you to think about a train, okay? I don't know if you know much about trains. One of my sons is very into trains. So when a train engine starts and the wheels begin to move down the track, the train begins to roll and increase in speed. And then as it reaches a certain speed, the engines relax a little because momentum takes over. And so much so that the train has difficulty stopping. Most average trains take at least a mile to stop once the brakes have been applied. If they're wanting to even come close to a stop, it takes about a mile or they'll hit something.
So once momentum begins, then friction is what becomes the focus. And the more friction, the more work it takes to maintain that hard-earned momentum. Your marriage works very similar to a train in that when there's friction in your marriage, whether that's financial stress, parenting challenges, physical health issues, breakdown in communication, whatever it is, when there's tension, when there's friction in your relationship, it takes more work. And the more friction that you have in your marriage, the harder it is to move forward, right? So when you have been married longer, you have more tension, you have more friction, which means that you need a little bit more momentum to get you back on the right track, right? The good thing about momentum in marriage is that it's not fixed, which means it can change. We just have to overcome any friction that you're facing. You have to identify what the friction is, but most of us know what the friction is. We just may have not talked about it yet. Your marriage train can begin to move again once you overcome that friction. The tracks aren't broken. There's nothing wrong with the engine. The train is still in good shape. So if your momentum is low, when you look on that SYMBIS sheet, if it says that your marriage momentum is low, it doesn't have to stay that way. It might be low right now, but it can increase. And being a part of this Roundtable series is giving you some of the momentum that you need back. The other side of that is that if your marriage momentum is high, that means that you can't get super comfortable because, again, it's not fixed. It ebbs and flows. The friction can easily be found, and it can be difficult to overcome. It's not it's not if friction comes, it's when friction comes in your marriage. So every couple, no matter where your little dial is from low to high on your marriage momentum, you're gonna benefit by gathering more momentum, and that ultimately is going to lead you to a stronger and healthier relationship in your marriage.
Now, if your momentum is low, you end up being your own worst enemy. We often tend to blame our circumstances or end up blaming each other because we feel stuck by the friction in our relationship. And in order to move forward, you're going to need to be proactive in looking for solutions because the obstacles you're facing are not insurmountable, but you have to take action in order to overcome them. You cannot just get to an obstacle and stop and hope that obstacle will go away. You're going to actually have to take action and work through that obstacle, climb that hill to get through it. If you are committed to your relationship, then every single day you can improve your momentum, okay? Now, marriage momentum can be measured with a simple formula. Marriage momentum is it equals the level of commitment that you each have multiplied by the direction that you want to go in your relationship. So if you're both committed to improve your relationship and you agree on the destination of your marriage, your momentum will increase.
So you're going to take a few minutes with this next question. If your spouse is here, you can talk to each other about it. If your spouse is not here, take a few minutes to look over that first or that second page of your Symbis. What is your marriage momentum score? Is it high? Is it medium? Is it low? Is that surprising to you? Does that come as a shock, or is that something that you could have, waged your bet on? And then discuss your agreement to improve your marriage momentum.
All right. Well, our marriage momentum is high, and I think, we're both on the same page about where we're going and how we want to get there. So feeling pretty good about our momentum.
I was impressed at our marriage momentum. It actually went up by several points. When we previously took this, we were at a different place in life. And so we were not in the same position that we are now. Our kids were younger. Robert wasn't the lead pastor of our church. I was not working as much. And so we've had a lot of factors from when we took it previously until we took it now. And it was high previously, but it increased, which was kind of surprising and made me feel like high five, because it increased. And I think that is not necessarily anything particular that we're doing. We're just following this. Like, this actually works.
Yeah,
And it is,
we're just putting in the work.
yeah. So if you take the time to read through all this and you take this seriously, it will improve your marriage. Oh, that's me. Just kidding. Okay, so the first myth that we had mentioned was that we expect exactly the same thing from marriage. When you got married, you brought in a number of conscious and unconscious expectations into the relationship. And this is where conflict can very easily arise and where friction kind of starts halting the brakes of your momentum. Because most of our unnamed expectations fall into two categories. Either they are unspoken rules or unconscious roles. And if you can't figure out by the word un in front, it means that you haven't said them and you don't know that you have them. So how can you possibly know that they're going to be kind of this friction-inducing thing in your marriage if you don't talk about them and you don't maybe even know that you have them? So that is what we bring into our mindset of marriage. And so if you take a look at page 3 on your SYMBIS assessment, this is your individual attitudes towards marriage in general. So research shows that there are actually 5 specific mindsets, and you may see on that sheet that you are both the same, or you may see that you are 2 different ones. But those 5 specific mindsets are resolute, rational, romantic, restless, and reluctant.
So we're going to go over each of those mindsets really quickly, and then we're going to give you some time to discuss. So the resolute mindset, this segment is 22% of the population, and it prizes marriage and holds tight to this unyielding determination that they're going to go the distance in their marriage. When it comes to marriage, the resolute is dedicated to ensuring their marriage lasts for a lifetime. Rational, this segment is 23% of the population, and it takes a more practical approach to marriage than any of the other mindsets. So they view this lifelong commitment of marriage with more caution than other people would. Romantic, this is 19% of the population, and it brings in a heavy dose of idealism into marriage. Romantics expect love to be lived out with unending passion and ongoing intimacy. Love, for the romantic, is a bit like a movie. It's adventurous, it's poetic, it's starry-eyed, it's chivalrous. In a word, for the romantic, love is idyllic. Okay? They see love as standing strong, overcoming all, and being the source of unending bliss. The restless mindset is 22% of the population, and it's not so sure about marriage, at least for now. They often lack confidence in their own skills to make their marriage work. Reluctant is 14% of the population, and they are not the marrying kind. More than any other segment, reluctants are cynical about matrimony. In fact, it's the only segment or the only mindset that has a complete lack of desire to wed, probably because their own homes were examples of how not to be married.
So what you're going to do is you are going to read through each of your mindsets, and you'll find that on your SYMBIS. But then we have given you an additional handout that explains what each mindset means and how 2 different mindsets might interact with each other. Okay, so there's a little bit more reading on this side. After you take a few minutes, we're going to give you about 10 minutes to read through that. If you have specific questions regarding your mindset, just let us know and we'll try to answer those.
All right. Well, we both have the same mindset. We're both resolute, and I think that has helped us as we've worked on building a strong and healthy marriage. And I think part of that is our intentionality of being positive towards each other when one of us makes a mistake. Research has found that happy relationships are characterized by a ratio of 5 to 1. That means for every negative statement or behavior, like criticizing or nagging, for every negative statement or behavior, you need 5 positive statements. So if you want your marriage to be happy, you've got to learn how to respect and honor and cherish each other.
And a positive mindset really can change your relationship because positivity prompts us to celebrate those little moments with your spouse. So we always say I love you when we leave. Like we just do. We always say it before we go to bed. And we look for specific ways to say I'm proud of you, like way to go. We high five each other like an excessive amount. And so just things like that you can do to let your spouse know that you are proud of them, you are thinking of them. Even saying thank you, something that might be expected. The trash needs to go out. But if I say thank you for taking the trash out, it's acknowledging, it's respecting. It is just a way that is very small that can make a big impact for your marriage. And so we really are trying to, in your marriage, having more momentum and less friction is really just bringing out the best in each other and really just trying to help your spouse to be the best that they can actually be. So the mindsets that we are exploring are often built long before we're even thinking about marriage. It's usually within childhood and adolescence because these mindsets that we come into marriage with are based on our family dynamics, the family that we grew up in, the relationship influences that we have in our lives. And often we develop those unspoken rules, those unspoken expectations as early as we possibly can. We don't even know that they're shaping us at that point. These become stress points when your spouse breaks a rule that they didn't even know existed, right? I'll give you an example. Oh, sorry.
Are you going to steal my thunder?
Oh, I was. That's okay, I'm going to do it anyways.
She's going to steal my
So for
pre-written
example,
answer.
When we got married, like this is a very, very small thing that in the grand scheme of things doesn't matter. But you know how things happen. One time I was looking to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and we didn't have any peanut butter. And I was like, man, that stinks. Love me some PB&Js.
We did have peanut butter.
But we did have peanut butter. But this person that I love very dearly grew up putting peanut butter in the refrigerator as a child.
Don't ask me why. I have no idea.
You cannot
Just what you do. I don't even like eating peanut butter and jelly sandwiches.
You cannot spread cold peanut butter, right? But that was that's a very small, silly example. But that's something that he didn't know wasn't a thing. Sorry, I just hit you. Sorry. He didn't know that was a thing. I didn't know there were those weirdos out there that put peanut butter in the refrigerator. And then they married each other, and I was like, man, I'm so sad I can't have a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. I mean, I couldn't have it anyways because he essentially ruined that jar. But that's like an example. I'm really not bitter about this, I promise.
I'll never put peanut butter in the fridge again. She is
I
not.
know.
It's still a thing.
No, he's learned
No,
his
it's
lesson.
not. I've learned my lesson. I keep peanut butter in the pantry now, okay? But we learned that. So one of your homework assignments is this, your personal 10 commandments. It's a workbook exercise. That's where we learned that unspoken rule. We did this activity and we're like, that's just how it's always been. And so I didn't know and she didn't know. And there's lots of rules like that. So this week you're going to do this workbook exercise and you're going to learn some things that you probably didn't know were a big deal that for your spouse. You know, that silly unspoken rule caused friction unnecessarily. Now, it didn't cause a lot of friction because it's just peanut butter, but it caused friction unnecessarily because we didn't say what we were thinking. We didn't speak out those expectations clearly, And so that's one of the things you're going to learn with this exercise. This is probably my favorite exercise we do with couples, because the answers they come up with are hilarious. The things that they do that they don't even know they do is hilarious. So this is a good one.
Yeah. So often you have these unconscious roles that we also fall into involuntarily. Without knowing it, husbands and wives are drawn into acting out roles that they form from a blend of their personalities. These also come from family backgrounds. It comes from marital expectations, and it also comes from cultural influences. So these expectations, and again, remember, most of them are unspoken expectations and unconscious roles. They really do have the potential to make or break your marriage because of that friction that we talked about earlier and slowing down your momentum. That then brings us conveniently to myth number 2, which was that everything good in our relationship will get better. And the truth is, that's just not accurate. Like, not everything gets better, right? Many things improve, and hopefully there are a lot of things that do improve, but some things really do become more difficult after you get married, and even the longer you've been married as well. Every successful marriage also requires necessary losses. Marriage means that you might be giving up a lifestyle that you were accustomed to before getting married. It means coming to terms with new limits or unexpected inconveniences. It could be just being responsible to someone else or for someone else as well. So your marriage is really about trade-offs and coming to the realization that you didn't marry the person you thought you did, right? Like, hopefully there's a piece of that person, but when you get married, that is a very different dynamic, and it shifts when you get married, and it shifts the longer that you have been married as well. So each of us has basically constructed this ideal person that we married based off of our experiences when we were dating, right? Let's be honest, they were putting their best foot forward, right? Like, when you were dating, you were on your best behavior. I would assume I was.
Hopefully you were on your best behavior.
Hopefully you were on your best behavior. But you realize after you get married that marriage is not constant romance, right? It is not all sunshine and rainbows and flowers and kisses and prizes and balloons and whatever else. It takes hard work. It takes working through that tension. You are going to face obstacles, and it takes give and take, honestly. So what we're going to do this week in your homework is that there is a workbook exercise that you guys have in your folder, and it's called From Idealizing to Realizing Your Partner. So Robert has it right there. This specific handout is going to help you work through expectations that you might still have about your spouse that's causing tension. Again, these are most likely unrealized expectations or even unrealistic. You may not even know that you have them, and that's why it's really important. We're not just giving you all this homework to give you homework, but because we actually genuinely believe that it will help you, because once you recognize those things, you're able to not have as much friction and more momentum.
So too often when couples marry, they never actually change their lifestyle. So they've been living a certain way when they were single or dating, and then they get married and they expect their lifestyle to more or less be the same. And this happens often because we fail to discuss expectations, and those failed expectations turn into disappointments, and those disappointments mount up and turn into resentments. So in your Symbis, on page 7 is what we're going to look at next. We're going to skip around a little bit. So on page 7, this section of your Symbis is about making unconscious roles and expectations conscious, okay? So here's what we want you to do. We want you to read through each of your expectations. At the top, you're going to see some expectations you agree on, and at the bottom, you're going to see some that you disagree on. These are the ones we want you to discuss, and if you have any questions at all, feel free to ask, and we'll try to bring some clarity to your assessment. All right. So looking at our expectations, I said that she was supposed to make the bed, but really, who makes their bed anymore? I mean, no. Oh my gosh. I do not make. Why make my bed? My room has a lock. No one goes in. But Kelly, I'm not making the bed. It's just not happening. Also, we talked about cooking meals. Growing up in my home, my dad cooked most of the meals. So my expectation is I'm going to cook all the time because that's what my dad did. That's the role that I fell into.
I agree with that
Yeah.
expectation.
But,
I like to eat.
she said that, okay, her expectation is we'd both do it together. The reality is.
I lied.
The reality is that she lied. She doesn't want to cook, and that's fine because I love to cook. And so some of these expectations might seem silly, but you might end up finding that there's tension behind them without recognizing, hey, we're both approaching this task, this chore, from two different perspectives.
Yeah. And it's okay if you feel like he should make the bed and he feels like she should make the bed, then just don't make the bed and then it's fine, right? Or if you don't want to cook and he doesn't want to cook, just call pizza. It's fine. So we're gonna cause a little bit of healthy tension in the room. Expectations, whether they are known expectations or unknown expectations, they are an ongoing part of married life, right? The fact is that all of us have a list of marital expectations, and it can be unspoken, it can be unconscious, you may not even be aware of it. So we know when our spouse doesn't meet an expectation. There might not be a list, but I know when he gets a C instead of an A, right? For whatever it might be.
Like when I put the dishes in the dishwasher and let the dishwasher clean them rather than pre-cleaning them.
I don't
and putting
care.
them in the dishwasher clean.
No, I don't care. I care when the sink is completely empty and then you put your dishes in and I'm like, gee, I wonder where the dishes went. Maybe in the dirty dishwasher. Put it in there, right? No, we're getting ahead of ourselves on this mind reading activity. So we end up blaming our spouse for something that they may not even have been aware of. So those unspoken expectations can lead to magical thinking. So developmental psychologists have found that young children have difficulty distinguishing in their head between subjective words and the outer objective world, and they call that magical thinking, okay? So in marriage, we have the same problem. We say things like, if he really loved me, I wouldn't have to tell him how I feel because he'd already know. Or we say things like, does she actually need me to tell her that I love her because my actions speak louder for myself? So what we're going to do is in your folder, you have this thing called a mind reading activity, okay? You're going to pull it out, and we're going to give you a few minutes to walk through it. But basically, you are going to we're going to practice right now so that when you need this, you've already done it, and you know what it feels like, and you know what it is. It's going to help you avoid that magical thinking. It's going to help you realize that you need to speak to each other, and you need to be clear in your communication with each other, and you need to not jump to those irrational conclusions that sometimes we jump to very quickly.
So here's your permission. When you have a fight, tell your spouse, stop, we're going to get out this activity, and we're going to do it, because this is going to help you realize that a lot of times the fights we have, the disagreements we have, are based off of unclear, unspoken expectations. So we're going to give you a few minutes to get this activity done.
take your pen and just cross out that and write in your own. The point is that you're thinking about it, right? The point is that you're reading this and going, this will make me feel uncomfortable, but I want to ask this instead. Then just ask that instead.
The point of this is to make you not get.
Wait, maybe you should ask Heather if you can give this example.
Well, and a big thing that we do is when we are in a situation where there's tension, something that I've learned to do, and I'm not perfect at this, but I do it now more often because it comes naturally to me, is I ask the question, is this a fix it or a feel it moment? Because I'm a fixer.
That's really helpful.
And I want to fix it, right? So if you're upset, I'll go beat someone up. Whatever it is, I want to fix it. The reality is, a lot of times, she just wants to feel it. And I don't want to feel it. I want to get it done, fix it, move on. And so, related to this mind reading activity, instead of me guessing what she's going to say and solving the problem for her, I've learned to slow down and say, okay, is this a fix it or a feel it moment? Then when it's a feel it moment, I just shut up and listen, right? And I get in far less trouble. And I say far less stupid things because I'm feeling it with her and not trying to fix something that she doesn't want fixed.
Yeah, that has been something that's been really, really helpful. And it has allowed me to even preemptively now say, like, I'm going to tell you something. It is a feel it. It is not a fix it. So, like, now he doesn't even have to ask. I mean, sometimes he does. But if I'm in the right headspace to be like, I need to have a conversation about this, I just need you to feel it, then that even opens up. So, yeah, I think it's fine to take that idea and mold it and shape it into your own. I think that's more what we do than that.
This is an activity they suggest. That's not how we do it. But the point of it is to begin that conversation. Stop expecting to know the answer when in reality it might be something totally different. So our third marriage myth is my spouse will make me whole. Okay, and this probably is the most dangerous of myths that we believe about marriage. Okay, the book of Proverbs says iron sharpens iron and one person sharpens another. Okay, marriage is a God-given way to improve ourselves, okay? Marriage challenges us to be the very best person that we can be possible, but marriage nor our partner can ever make us whole, okay? That's a mistake that many people believe. They want someone to complete them, right? Marriage is not meant to complete you. It's meant to complement you. If you are looking to your spouse to fix all of the problems that you have in your life from your past, that past trauma, those past experiences, that is incredibly unhealthy. When we believe the myth that our spouse will make us whole, we become dependent on our partner in a way that is unhealthy. Experts call this an enmeshed relationship, okay? When we are dependent, we focus on happiness, not personal growth. And we're not interested in nourishing or working on the relationship. We're actually looking for our partner to nourish us and fix us.
On the opposite side of that, so the enmeshed relationship is over here. The other side of that pendulum is being too self-reliant. And experts call that a disengaged relationship. And basically what that means is it's another unhealthy dynamic because we are seeking wholeness in isolation and completely independent from our spouse and from God. When people get married and they say, my spouse is never going to change me, I'm not going to do this, they make all of these commitments and they make all these vows where they don't want to be too dependent on their spouse because that scares them. But then we go to the other extreme where you're not depending on your spouse at all, and that's also not healthy. So a sense of wholeness can never be achieved in either of these types of relationships. It cannot be achieved in enmeshed, and it cannot be achieved in a disengaged relationship. Wholeness is specifically found in what is called an interdependent relationship, in which the two people they self-respect, they respect themselves, they respect their spouse, and they have dignity to make a commitment to nurture their own spiritual growth, but also their partners. So going back to that math equation that we were talking about earlier, it's two people's commitments. I have to commit to this type of relationship. He has to commit to this type of relationship. And so those kinds of relationships, there's three different kinds. So an A frame is a dependent relationship where one is supporting the other, right? The H frame is the interdependent, independent, where they're separated, right? But then the M frame is the interdependent relationship. And so you can see that, you can see those letters up there. The A-frame relationship is symbolized by the capital letter A, which partners have a strong identity but very little self-esteem. The H-frame relationships are structured as a capital H. Like I said, partners essentially stand alone. They're very self-sufficient, and neither are influenced much by one or the other. They're connected, but only in one point for each individual. And then the M-frame relationship is the interdependence, and that is where each partner has high self-esteem. But they're committed to helping each other grow, and you can see where there's multiple points where they're touching. They can stand on their own, but they actually are choosing to stand together. And there's beauty in that because that shows respect to you as an individual, and it shows respect to your partner as well. In an interdependent marriage, joy is doubled, and it actually cuts your sorrow in half.
All right, so we're going to look at page 4 in your SYMBIS assessment. It looks like this. It has the word well-being at the top, okay? Your marriage can only be as healthy as each of you are individually, okay? This is probably the most important page to focus on in your relationship, because we have found that most marital strife and conflict comes from an inability to recognize, to admit, and to work through your own personal well-being. Okay? On this page, you're going to see a percentage of your individual well-being. This shows you an idea of your self-concept, empathy, and autonomy. And at the bottom of the page, you'll see a percentage that tells you your marriage well-being. This reveals how your two personal well-beings builds trust, stability, as well as how similar you are in the relationship, okay? I don't want you to look at the scores and think, okay, if I have a high percentage, I get a good grade, okay? Because there's a lot of factors that go into this, and this can change, okay? So that means well-being is our emotional, our psychological, and our spiritual health. A few months ago, we went through the mental health series, and I defined mental health as this: the capacity of an individual to mentally, emotionally, psychologically, socially, and spiritually experience the fullness of all that life that Christ offers us. And so this SYMBIS assessment is going to give you a jumping off point to help you understand your mental health and how it impacts your marriage, because more than probably anything else in your marriage, your mental health individually greatly impacts your marriage. The well-being section focuses on our mental well-being, which is the ability to think clearly and rationally in a healthy manner. It talks about our emotional well-being, which is the ability to understand and process feelings in a healthy manner. It talks about our psychological well-being, which is the ability to function in a healthy manner in spite of the brokenness of the world around us. And it focuses on our spiritual well-being, the ability to discern God's voice from your voice and Satan's voice. Okay, in a few minutes, we're going to tackle the social well-being side of our mental health. That's the ability to connect with others in a healthy manner. When you look at your well-being percentages, don't look at them as scores. They are temperature readings. Okay, these numbers are not permanent. In fact, my well-being score went down pretty considerably from the last time that we took this test, and that's because a lot has happened in our life since we took this test last, one of which being changing my role at church, which brought on a different level of stress and things like that. And so your well-being score will fluctuate, and the more you work on it, the more it will go up.
Yeah, and I just want to say, we're going to give you a few minutes to look through this page because it's pretty hefty. But there are a few things that you might find what are called caution flags, and you'll find that at the very bottom of your individual well-being. And this is kind of our plug where we say there are some of those caution flags that you can't work through on your own. If you have caution flags like abuse by someone or abuse, from your parents, addiction, there are a lot of caution flags that other work needs to go into before you can increase your score, right? For us, we both have been and are in counseling separately for some of those caution flags, and that allows us to come to the table and be able to see our scores for what they are. So know that some of those things are not going to go up automatically, even if you complete all 8 weeks of summer roundtable, right? Like, that's just not realistic. Some of those things you may need to look at, and you may need to pray through and be like, okay, God, what do I do with this? Now this is staring me in the face. This is a caution flag. This is affecting my marriage. Maybe now is the time that you say, I need help finding a counselor, or I need something else to do. So you guys are going to read through your well-being as individuals, which is the top of the page. You guys read through your marriage well-being together. And if you have any specific questions, feel free to ask. All right. A person with a healthy self-concept has an attitude of flexibility, harmony, and dignity under stress. They are honest about their shortcomings and are comfortable giving and receiving compliments, which some of us struggle with. A person with a healthy self-concept also is very secure and very comfortable in their own skin. Again, something that people really struggle with. Empathy is the ability to put yourself in each other's shoes as a couple, and it is one of the most important skills that you can develop in a healthy marriage. It also helps in other areas of life as well, but particularly marriage. Empathy requires both you to utilize both your head and your heart, because it takes very intentional effort to be empathetic towards people. Particularly when you have more tension, it's going to be more difficult to have more empathy towards your spouse. So autonomy is the process that healthy people go through to achieve a sense of individuality that is separate from what others think they should be, right? It is a lifelong process that we struggle with because it is essential, but we really struggle with that idea because we put so much emphasis on other people's opinions. So when we're struggling in the area of autonomy, it can lead back to that idea of either overdependence on your spouse. It can lead to making poor decisions, or just a general lack of self-purpose, self-meaning, and struggling to figure out where you're at in life and even where you want to go.
And like Kelly said, with those caution flags, these are issues that are on your marriage track. And if you feel like, hey, I'm looking at these caution flags and I need to find a counselor, we can help you do that. Our church is partnered with a few different counseling organizations. We'd be happy to get that set up for you. Also, as you go through the assessment, you'll see that we're going to try to get through a ton of information every single week. There's going to be a lot for you to unpack and talk about at home. And so if you're going through your assessment and you're looking at it and there's things that we don't get to cover, like if you are remarried or you're blending your family, you'll have an extra page in your assessment. And at the end of the 8 weeks, we'll have 2 additional pages that we're not going to cover at all. So if that's something you want to unpack and you want to talk through, we're happy to set up a counseling appointment with you and work through those additional pages. But as you look at this well-being page, there's 25 potential caution flags that could show up on your report. And typically these caution flags come in clusters. In other words, if a person has one caution flag, it's very likely that they have others as well. So don't be alarmed if you look at those several caution flags. The important thing is for you to be aware of those issues and to actually do something proactively to work through them, okay? There is a workbook exercise in your packet, and it is called Assessing Your Self-Image, okay? I think it's the last one. So it's called Assessing Your Self-Image. And this is going to be super helpful this week as you work through your well-being page and you talk through it. It's stapled on this packet. It's the last page or second to last page. It's called Assessing Your Self-Image. This is very helpful for you to identify those caution flags and your own self-esteem and self-worth and learn how to move through that.
Looking back at your SYMBIS, can I see that page? The bottom portion of this page of your SYMBIS, which I'll show you in just a minute. Ooh, almost lost it. Okay. This bottom page of your SYMBIS here, it not only reveals how your 2 personal positions on well-being combine, but it also takes into account 3 additional elements that are also important in your marriage, okay? So in many ways, trust is the bedrock of your relationship, and trust is basically a belief in your spouse's reliability, okay? Every relationship falters when trust is questioned, and so it takes trust. A marriage is built on a pledge that requires confidence, conviction, and faith. So without trust, you allow doubt and skepticism to seep into the crevices of your relationship, again, maybe in places that you don't even know are there. And that really starts to crumble. And we as human beings, God created us to function best with stability. We really like when things are smooth and steady. We like when there's no friction. We like when that momentum is going down the track. So anytime there's instability, that really creates anxiety inside of us. It could be around finances, it could be around career decisions, health, anything. Instability really heightens our fears and our frustrations. And so as you're looking at that, trust, stability, and then the last one on the bottom of that page that your Symbis takes into account is the similarity section. And that similarity section on the bottom is your individual core values. Whether, again, all of this is whether you say it or not, whether you recognize it or not, you do have a list of core values inside of you that are really desirable for you. They are things that are important to you. They are things that matter. They are things that you are going to fight for. And so when your core values align or are in common or adjacent to each other, you're going to have more momentum and less friction, right? So research shows that the more that two people have in common, the easier and stronger their relationship is. And that's where we have that smooth momentum as opposed to the friction. So take a look at those trust, stability, and similarities.
An unhealthy well-being often leads us to believe our final myth, which is everything bad in my life will disappear. Many people marry to avoid or escape unpleasantness. But no matter how glorious the institution of marriage is, it's not a substitute for the difficult work of inner spiritual healing. The bad traits and feelings you carried around before you were married often remain long after you say, I do. Getting married cannot instantly cure all of our ills, but marriage can be a powerful healing agent over time. And so if you are patient, marriage can help you overcome even some of the toughest tribulations that you've went through in life. All of us, at least unconsciously, marry in the hopes that we will have healing in our wounds. And that healing process begins gradually when we uncover and acknowledge unresolved childhood issues. And so the healing continues through the years of your marriage if you will allow your spouse to love you and you will take the time to learn how to love them. That's why we provided a workbook exercise this week called Exploring Unfinished Business. And this exercise will help you begin the healing process together as you discuss some of those past traumas that you experienced.
As you work through this exploring unfinished business, you'll realize that some of it has to do with your family of origin. Some of it will have to do with friends, other family members, right? Part of our healing involves those other people outside of our marriage. Friends and family sustain us. They help shape our identity. They provide us with some of those understandings, those norms. They have given us some of those rules that we talked about earlier, some of those expectations. And so our friends and family, they are a part of our relationship in our marriage, right? They are not the center. They are outliers, but your family and your friends really do play a part into your marriage, okay? So the social support that your family and your friends provide can sustain your marriage. It also can do damage to your marriage if it is not healthy. So if you turn to page 5 in your Symbis, you will see that this section is dedicated to your context of your social life. It will help you to have a picture of where your social life is. It will help you to leverage your social life to help your marriage. You'll be able to see maybe what might be causing some friction, and some of that might be surprising to you, some of it isn't. Like our ours is not very shocking to me. Where we're at, particularly relationship with in-laws, that can be a really tough one for a marriage as well. So take a few minutes, read through page 5 of your SYMBIS, which is your social life context. Take a look at that, read through it. If you guys have questions, feel free to ask. Andy. Uh-huh. Yes, that's how ours is as well.
So you'd have the same description if it's within the 3 dots of each other, right? So yours she's only 2 dots in a different direction, so that shows you that there's progress to be made in prioritizing, but you're on a healthy side of the dynamic, right? So there's a middle point of that. If you're farther to the right, you're going to have the same paragraph. That means you're doing well. If you're more towards the middle, you might have the same paragraph, and that means you have things to work on. If you're far to the left, that means you might if you have the same paragraph, that means you have a lot of things to work on. And so, yeah, if she's close to you and you have the same paragraph, that means you're doing well, but your dot location, if you're not all the way to the right, then you have some things to work on.
It helps if you see the positive and negatives on the very end of it's kind of hard because it blends in, but on the very end of each arrow, you'll see a positive and a negative. So you'll see that it's like a spectrum. Yeah.
Yeah, so like almost all of ours are the exact same paragraph, and that's because almost all of ours are to the right. There's a couple of ours that we have a slightly different paragraph. So you want to be all the way to the right, both of you. If you're anywhere not all the way to the right, then that means you have some work to do. All right. So we're going to go over homework as we wrap up. You have quite a bit of homework to do. So first is SYMBIS assessment. If you've not yet completed that, we want you to do that. Then you're going to watch a video, session 1 video. It's found in the Church Center app. I've dropped the link already in the group. Tighten the knot. It has a link that says session 1 video. Okay, that's the one you're going to watch. You can watch it together or separately. It doesn't matter. But after you watch that, you're going to work through your workbook exercises. You have several of them to do. Some of them will take you not very much time at all. Some of them are going to require a lot more intentionality and time. Okay, after that, you have your extra question sheet. These are things that we want you to discuss as you talk through your SYMBIS assessment, okay? So additional questions for you to talk through. Then there's this truth-tacto couple activity. This is just a fun thing for you to do. It shouldn't take very much time. This is a great thing to do if you, go to a restaurant or you're sitting down at dinner together. It's a simple activity for you to complete. And then you're going to continue doing your spouse study challenge that you got last week, okay? So if you have any questions, we're here to answer them. Make sure you check out the Resource Hub. There's books back there that we suggest. And also, make sure you sign up to bring food. There's a yellow sign-up sheet that I have right now for next week. Normally it's at Connecting Point. There's also a digital link in the Church Center app, so you can sign up digitally or on paper. It doesn't matter to us. I'm going to pray, and then we'll be dismissed. God, thank you for tonight. God, God, thank you for everyone who's come and taken time out of their schedule to make their marriage a priority. God, we pray as we discuss through this assessment and talk about our well-being and our expectations and our social life and our marriage momentum, that you will bring clarity, that you will help us to understand the areas that we need to work on in our marriage, and also celebrate the things that are going well. God, we pray that this week that we're able to have some serious conversations and talk about things that are affecting our marriages, and we pray that in everything we give you the glory. In Jesus' name, amen.
There's been a mystery throughout history, holding my freedom in its hands. A buried truth I had to find to ever have a chance. I was left vulnerable, unequipped, an easy prey.